Well, let's go ahead and get into it. I'm Rich Swerbinsky with Onward and Upward Consulting, and this is The Big Picture. I want to thank you for joining us this week. And as I am every week, pleased to be joined by my esteemed colleague and co-host, Rob Krisman. Rob, now that the Cavs have extracted the true brains from the Bay Area, Kenny Atkinson coming to Cleveland, any panic in Warrior Lane? None.
Nowhere to go but up, right? We didn't even make the playoffs.
That is true. Maybe they'll draft Bronny in round 2 today. You think he'll?
I don't know. There's a lot of talk out there about Paul George.
Yeah, Paul George seems to be available. So
I don't understand why the
Would be
Warriors.
good.
Really? Oh well. People aren't tuning in though to talk basketball.
they're not. So with that, I'd like to introduce our guest this week. Very, very pleased to be joined this week by the Chief Revenue Officer for Tabrasa, good friend and longtime followed market analyst, our good friend Bill Bodnar. Bill, how are you doing today?
Thanks for having me. Thanks for having me. Great to be here.
Awesome. We're looking forward to the discussion as always. Chat, Q&A, put your thoughts in there. We'll incorporate it into the show. But let's go ahead and get started. And Rob, the debate tonight, I know you're a big fan of politics and got to be excited for this tonight. You going to a big debate party, hosting one? What are your plans for the debate tonight?
Through a scheduling mishap, I don't even know if it's a mishap. Apparently, the debate teams did not consult with me, but I am speaking in San Francisco tonight from starting right at 6 p.m. West Coast time, 9 p.m. East Coast time.
Okay.
So I won't even. I'll have to look at a recording on. I'll have to put up. Hopefully it's on Betamax, and I can watch the recording.
So you're competing against the debate tonight. I'm surprised the debate folks didn't consider that,
Exactly.
I know. I'm drawing 40 people away from the debate, which is pretty good. Pretty good for a small group.
I put a poll up on LinkedIn like 4 or 5 days ago. They got a bunch of votes. Just basically, are you going to watch the debate? 60% were yes. I think 30% were yes, but I don't want to admit it. And then and 10% or no. So, but
It could be high entertainment, right?
it should be. I'm a fan of trashy reality shows. So, to me, this is like the ultimate trashy reality show. I mean, if you were to paint this picture, almost like the global pandemic, like if you would have, tried to make a movie about that, 30 years ago, nobody would have believed it. This presidential rematch would have really been hard to fathom in more sane times, I think so. So
Yeah, I don't know if anyone's enamored with the choices. Uh, what can you say? We'll know more in about 12 hours.
we'll know more tonight. Should be interesting. And housing could be on the menu tonight in the debate. Trump really has not said too much at all about housing, really just kind of banging the inflation is killing everything drum without a lot of specifics. But we saw the Biden administration this week put out a few different things related to housing, seemingly probably in advance of tonight, so they can talk about them and say there's been some action. On Monday, Treasury Secretary Janet Yellen put out a release and spoke about it publicly about a bunch of different initiatives. Not a lot of meat on the bone. A creation of a new $100 million affordable lending fund. Calling once again on the federal home loan banks to do a little bit more. And then today we got a joint press release from Adrian Todman from HUD and Kamala Harris with the results of I guess $85 million in funds that had been allocated to state and local governments in exchange for zoning stuff that we remember talking about this a year or so ago. They dangled federal money carrot out there to municipalities and states that would rezone. So Rob, to get us started, any thoughts on any of the releases this week on housing stuff from the Biden administration?
Well, you talk about let's just I'm simple-minded capital markets guy. If you think the overall lending industry is $1 trillion, so 10% of that number is 100 billion, right? And then 10% of that, or 1% of that, is $1 billion. So when you start talking about numbers like 85 million, it's such a tiny percentage of the overall
Thank you for
market.
bringing that up.
And 85 million, I mean, what is that, like $1.5 million per state? I mean, that wouldn't even buy a starter home here in the San Francisco Bay Area. So I think a lot of it is symbolic. And a lot of I get tired of the word crisis. I'm not convinced that housing is in a crisis. A lot of people, most people, I mean, the Biden administration, blame whatever you want on the Biden administration or the Trump administration prior to that, but interest rates are where they are. Uh, obviously a president doesn't uh, can't be held accountable for a ship getting stuck in the Suez Canal, or Russia signing an agreement with North Korea, whatever it is. And so I think Bill is going to talk more about inflation. But in terms of some of these housing initiatives, I'm not quite sure that the system is in a crisis, because if you want a loan and you qualify for that loan, you can go out and get a loan. And if eventually, inventory stinks, but I see houses for sale. So I'm not sure we're in a crisis stage, and I think there are more pressing matters that the candidates can talk about tonight. Bill, what are your thoughts on how
Well,
the economy is?
when you take a look at that, I'll share my screen since you mentioned the new home sales, and I think it's just interesting. The reason. Obviously, rates are a huge problem, and president can, I agree with you. They can't take all the blame, but when we take a look at where the sources of inflation are now, you could make an argument that and it's not me saying it or you saying it, it's central banks around the globe saying it. They hiked in this cycle, they hiked rates after us, and they're cutting before us. And you ask why, and they're saying, well, one big source of their inflation, and I'm talking about around the globe, is different from ours. Yeah, we all got hit with the Suez Canal and supply chain stuff, but they did not have this overly aggressive stimulative fiscal policy at odds with monetary policy. And so, I think that we're going to have to get through it, and it's not going to be easy. So, that's reality, and maybe some of that comes up on the debate because it's real. And this was the housing thing that Rich just came up. More builders looking to cut prices, and I think one of the things that I'm thinking about is supply. We always talk, we need supply, we need supply. Well, here's a chart of monthly supply of new homes, 9.3 months at the current sales rate. That's a lot. That's a lot of homes. And like you, I'm a simple guy. Rob, look at these gray shaded lines. I don't be a Debbie Downer. You see spikes in inventory, and sometimes the outcomes aren't so great. Any thoughts on that? Like the fact that we're seeing, builders say, hey, rates are high, not just the rates on mortgages, but the rates to go develop the property. I can't find workers, right, to get stuff done. It's the regulations to get a land, approved. There's a lot of headwinds, and it's not as easy as Rich said. Let's just throw 85 million. I mean, I think a builder needs that to do one development, and it's just not
Yeah,
a solution.
It's not a we've talked about it on the show many times. We've actually, Bill, you and I have been on stage talking about these issues for years now.
Yeah.
It's not a simple matter of, oh, let's build 1 million homes in eastern Nevada or western Texas, or plop. We can fix these. Let's just get the local county commissioner to lower the permitting costs. Well, it's a very complicated issue, and it's one thing for the administration to come out and say, well, we need more houses. But by the time it gets to Rich's neighborhood, Rich Zerbinski does not want 50 affordable housing units built, 200 yards up the road. So
Yeah.
it's a problem.
It really is. Another thing, Rich, I don't know if you wanted to bring up, but something I haven't seen happen, and I'd love to get your thoughts in the last 48 hours. The Fed always tries to stay apolitical. And they're nudging around. I can almost push back that they're being politicized because they're being dragged into this fight of not being able to cut rates because of our fiscal policy. So they're kind of involved. But Bowman was out within the last like 48 hours. And she actually said this. She said, because of immigration, like all of the migrants coming into the country, which by the way, no one even knows the number. I mean, you hear anything from 8 to 12, 15 million. Who the heck knows what they are? But
I
think
have
about
12 in my car right now, Bill.
it's what about like rents? They said like that is going to keep rents high. And we know rents, when we talked about inflation a moment ago, with rents and shelter being such an outsized proportion of inflation, how does inflation come down? And you see like, Fed pushing back on the fact that inflation, and we're going to get into it tomorrow in a little bit. But what are your thoughts on that? A, them mentioning that, and B, is that reality?
Yeah, rent. I mean, I think immigration and new people coming into the country, it's helping push rents up. Rents lag, uh, purchase, mortgage affordability, which obviously has been waning. So, and yeah, I mean, it's a big part of the picture. I think I said the stat I saw today was I think 80% of renters are spending more than 30% of their monthly income
Crazy.
on rent. So, and that's a number that, when you see stats on the economy, that are good, that are painting a picture of a robust economy, yet you see public opinion polls that don't seem to jive up with that. I do think that's a big part of it. And we'll see. I think that will come up tonight, and we'll see. It'll be interesting to see how much Trump spars on shelter costs and housing affordability, and how much he gets in the weeds there, and how much, or if he just does what he's done to this point, just kind of bangs that, listen, I'm going to get inflation under control and this will all go away, has kind of been his tagline to this point.
I
Yeah.
don't think Bill, correct me if I'm wrong, but I don't think we need, at this point, I don't think the economy needs stimulation in the form of the Federal Reserve coming in and cutting 25 or 50 basis points. What do you think?
I totally agree. Remember, there's a lag effect. What I worry about is that they're going too far, because it's really tough to understand how strong the economy is, because whether you're on one side or everything's so divisive, God sakes, you can't even, they had a tough time defining what even a recession was years ago. But like, how good is the economy? You have some of these reports that say things are great. Then you hear the Fed chair say, the jobs may be a little overstated. And then you look into some of the weeds, and some of these things I don't like real retail sales not doing well, durable goods orders. You could see the economy, already slowing down or decelerating. And you just wonder, like, are we going to get a number that says, wait, things are bad? And then we're late to the party, because, when you don't understand how good things are based on the reports, you look around, and when you see all of these stores like Walgreens just today out, they're dropping prices of everything. Target's doing everything. McDonald's and these other things are having these $5 value meal brawls. That doesn't smell like things are going swimmingly, at least at the consumer level. And I think, that's a telling sign. And at some point they get tapped out. And by the time we figure out it's tapped out, what the heck's a quarter base or 25 basis point cut going to do? So I don't know.
Yeah, I would say there are signs the consumer's getting a little weary of spending, and they've been running up $1 trillion plus of credit card debt.
Yeah.
And they're paying 20, 25, 30% on that debt. And so that's, their interest payments aren't going to help the economy. They are going to cover their interest payments on their previous spending. So yeah, I don't know. I get bedazzled by some of these numbers. I was at an event recently, and I was talking to a woman who assured me that 60 million US jobs, 60 million out of the numbers that we see go to illegal immigrants, or have gone to illegal immigrants. 60 million jobs. And I thought, that's a lot of jobs. But I didn't ask her where that number came up from, because sometimes people see statistics and they just spout them off, without a lot of validity. So
it sounds like a Newsmax stat to me, but
We should talk about something. Why don't we talk about something like, reining in credit costs? No, I'm just kidding about the credit costs. That's a sticky subject. There's plenty of blame to go around there, starting with FICO on down. But anyway, yeah, the numbers about from the economy and, credit costs and junk fees that the CFPB is railing about. There's all kinds of things to talk about.
Yeah. And, on the junk fees, it sounds great, but like, it doesn't heat your home. Oil is such a big part. We got to see what energy did a couple of years ago when it went from 60 to 130 and just absolutely destroyed us. And we found out how important energy is in our food supply. And oil, here we are at $80 a barrel. And we talk about where inflation's going. I know, you may want to touch on what PCE is tomorrow, but and maybe we can bleed into it now, Rich, if you want. But because when I look at inflation tomorrow, we're going to get the Fed's favorite gauge of inflation, and it's supposed to come in at like a scant little 1/10, right? And 2.6%. And think, wow, well, 2.6%, the Fed's looking for 2, and he wants it to see, sustainably towards 2%. I don't know, feels pretty good, right? It was up near 5, now it's 2.6. Yet they said it's going to end the year at 2.8. And that because inflation's not going to moderate further, we're going to cut rates maybe once. And so, this is probably one of the most telegraphed core PCEs I've ever seen, almost like you can check it off. But if it misses by 1/10 either way, our peers in the mortgage business can be going crazy, especially if it comes in higher, right? Everybody's thinking, okay, we're going to get this 1/10. But man, if it came in 2/10 and was 2.7, it's just amazing, like the volatility and the lunacy that will take place tomorrow morning.
Bill, do you find that the bond market foreshadows what the Fed is going to do? So by the time the Fed does something, it's already been priced into short-term rates and mortgage rates?
That used to be the case. This is probably one of the craziest cycles that I've seen, and we're living through together. For years, they always used to joke, a couple things you can bet on: death, taxes, and the Fed dot plot being wrong. But guess what? The dot plot, it's kind of been right. If you would have told me they were getting the Fed funds rate, 5.25 to 5.5 over a year ago, they're like, no way. They got it there. And if you said they were going to keep it this long, remember, we walked into this year, the Fed fund futures said we're going to get 7 rate cuts. We're going to be lucky if we get 1. And so this is one of those crazy years where the bond market hasn't gotten it right. And now I hear that the bond market is saying like the terminal, like the rate longer down than like the neutral rate further downstream is going to be much higher than what the Federal Reserve says. So good luck sorting it all out. This is a weird cycle, and there's giant bets all over the place. Like there's people saying we're going to get 1 cut, and now I'm hearing Goldman Sachs and others saying that there are giant bets starting to be placed that they may be front loaded. Like we may see 300 basis points next year, which is just crazy, right? So good luck trying
we'll all be clutching onto Rich's apron, under apron strings, looking for answers.
Well, it's an interesting dilemma the Fed has. And as Bill mentioned, we get a big inflation number tomorrow morning, personal consumption expenditure, I think.
Yeah, that's a mouthful. Yeah.
Yeah. I want to make sure I had it right there. I know we bungled over Chat GPT and the what that acronym stands for a few shows ago. So, but as you mentioned, Bill, the Fed's stated favorite measure of inflation, CPI and PPI, the 2 more headline numbers that seem to get more media coverage. But tomorrow we get PCE, and as you know, it's supposed to tick up at 0.1, I believe, and year over year 2.7% net inflation. That's stripping out. This is an index that strips out energy and food, which are really volatile silos of that. So, but yeah, I mean, to your point, I mean, I think the Fed has been trying to, and I think the Fed doesn't want to cut this year, but they feel all this pressure to, so they've been measuring their words very carefully. And then going into big numbers like this, it seems, Bill, to your point, as if they're almost trying to prep the market for what's coming tomorrow, because they have to have some idea, right?
Totally. And what's interesting, and we'll get next week, what's crazy is like, what's great about following this stuff, you're speaking in real time, and what we're talking about today will be ancient history next week because of the jobs report, and then we have the Fed minutes. And so at the last Fed meeting, when they gave out that economic projection, they're saying like tomorrow's actually supposed to be 2.6. They're saying the year's going to end at 2.8. And so it's like, you want to look at the bond markets, look, that's why the bond market can't go anywhere. It's like, unless we get a bad print, and I guess what that another segue would be into, it feels like right now, bad news is finally bad news. Like before, bad news was, okay, well, the Fed can't hike rates anymore, right? We're always worried when we get more hikes. So the hiking's done. Now we're at a point where bad news finally chisels away into that. Is there going to be a recession story? Like before, you look back 5 months ago, the idea of a recession when we were growing in the third quarter at nearly 5% was a distant dream. But now that the first quarter today was reported at 1.4, the second, who the heck knows? And you're seeing some weak numbers. Could there be a recession? And I see a lot of things that lead to it. And I'm a simple guy. I just look at what's going on with some of these firms saying that consumers are kind of tapped out. They make up 2/3 of the economy. We got to do a lot of government spending to make that up, right? Some of those high GDP prints were a lot of government spending. So it'll be interesting.
So Bill.
Yeah.
You, everybody in the industry knows that you play the lottery. And so I'm just kidding. Maybe you do. I don't know. You win $1 million. Forget taxes. You get $1 million check. Ed McMahon shows up. I don't think Ed's still alive, but anyways, Rich Stravinsky shows up with a check, $1 million from the Ohio lottery. What do you do? What are you gonna do with that money?
It's a great question. Crazy enough. Right now, I would probably put it in real short-term treasuries and maybe buy a little bit in some of these stocks. Why? If you can get over 5%, that's why, I'm really optimistic about rates being, certainly near the peaks. If you could capture a good chunk of the long-term benefits of stocks, sit around for 2 years and just watch what happens, because you don't know what's going on. I mean, all the noise that's out there, you got an administration maybe changing, the uncertainty on tax policy. Just take a breather, sit on the sidelines, and collect over 5% for 2 years. That's what I do.
So you put it in church, you go out and buy a 2-year.
Yeah, short-term.
Kind of
yeah.
T-note and earn
4.8,
whatever
it is today. Yeah, I mean, I probably would, and certainly have to get some NVIDIA, because that, I do think it's funny. You and I talked about AI. It wasn't that long ago. That was that last September? Right?
Do you remember? Yeah, something like that.
It was last September. We were in Georgia, so it's not even a year later. And the speed at which that is accelerating is unbelievable, and they're at the forefront of it. It's remarkable.
Yeah. All right. Well, you heard it here first. Put your money into
GameStop.
T-notes.
Oh,
GameStop. Put in GameStop a little bit in the treasury. Yeah.
No, I like that answer, Bill. Honestly, that might have been my answer as well. My serious answer to that.
Yeah. Because if you get a recession, Rich, if you're not sure, here's something interesting too that for people out there, we're going to get this one rate cut in the last, you go back the last 50 years, 9 months after the first rate cut, stocks are on average down 20%. So if you want to look at something optimistic for us in the mortgage business, where's that money going to go, right? And so maybe that's why they're waiting. Hey, don't cut yet, because maybe if it's finally buying the rumor, selling the news, kind of the opposite. We'll see.
Uncertain.
Rich, I would have asked you the lottery question, except I know that you would have just deferred that to your staff who manages your money, and you would be, I don't know what they do with it, but I'm sure it's something smart.
Either do I. So, but yeah, it does feel uncertain right now in the economy, and I know Rob and I have
been. But doesn't it always?
Well, I mean, to me more so now, because I just, the consumer is really tapped out. I mean, I think there's so much overwhelming evidence of that, from polling data to credit card balances to consumer spending data. It really, really does feel like you just have a tapped out consumer right now. And we've seen some weakening in the jobs numbers. It is really an uncertain time right now, honestly, and not only for our industry and mortgage rates, but but for the broader economy. And I'm sure we're going to hear a lot about all that tonight, in the debate. Rob won't, because he'll be competing against the debate.
I'll be watching on my Betamax. It'll be interesting to see if somehow President Biden can sneak in the fact that the U.S. is producing more oil now than it ever has in the history of the United States. And Bill, I think you mentioned, I mean, the price of oil has actually come down, and wages have actually picked up here in the last year or two.
They have.
So,
They have.
so it's
Yeah.
not quite dire, but yeah, I would say given credit card debt, uh, that's a real problem. Somebody's making money off of consumers, and I guess whoever it is that collects that interest. But what is so interesting to me, there's a lot of interesting things to me in life, but we're always looking at that next, Bill brought it up. Okay, next week we've got this, and the week after we've got that, and like then we get this again. And then it's like, whatever comes out today or tomorrow, it's old news come Friday night or Saturday or Sunday. And what's next? What's next? What's next?
Yeah.
So I think I'm in the Fed camp where I'm more of a fan than a critic. The economy is doing okay. Yeah, maybe they lower at some point, but right now I think it's kind of steady as she goes for a while. But I think if they do lower rates, Bill, I think we're going to hear, oh, it's because Joe Biden called up Jerome Powell and said, Jerome, may I call you Jerome or Chairman Powell? Hey, how about a little rate cut for me? I think the critics will say, oh, the Fed lowered rates because of politicking ahead of the election.
Well, they did get out in front of that. They kind of did say that now that they have this one cut on the books, they said there's really no appetite to change unless they get unexpected weakness from the labor market. And then they start to go back to that dual mandate and start to look at what's happening there. And to Rich's point earlier, the unemployment rate has ticked up from 3.4 to 4. Usually when it starts going up, it continues going up. It isn't just so we're going to watch it. We're going to find out. I agree with you. I mean, I think it's still going, the economy's humming along, but it's humming along at a slower speed, and it's definitely bifurcated. If you're wealthy and you have owned stocks and homes, and like you, Rob, or you're like Rich and I, maybe a little bit more, low key, it's a different world.
So Bill, what do you think of the story came out 2, 3, 4 months ago from either Donald Trump himself or the Trump advisory team or somebody said that they are in favor of the president either having more sway over the actions of the Federal Reserve or
it's terrible
changes that the Fed wants to make. They have to run by the president first. I'm frankly not a fan.
No, it's terrible. It's a terrible idea. That was a stupid idea conceptually and politically. It's just dumb. I mean, that idea makes no sense. But at the same time, because you can do things like now, like right now, I would argue that the Fed is being kind of dragged into this. Could the Fed have cut earlier? Maybe. A lot of money. I mean, we even talk about debt, all these problems that we have. We're not in a war and we're not in a pandemic. How are we putting on $1 trillion worth of debt every 100 days? Like, what's going on? And I don't know what's going to happen. You could tell me what's going to happen if we let 10 million people just come in, and what do you do with them? I mean, right outside of New York City, I heard almost 1/5 of the hotels are housing immigrants or migrants. It's like, well,
where did that statistic come from?
That's what I heard. I heard that in New York City.
Newsmax.
I don't know. No, it's a big number.
It's a big number.
It's a big number. It's a big number. And you see. So, but that's in the cities. That's in the city. So,
Bill,
I don't
do
know.
you think, does Powell, if Trump wins, is Powell retained as Fed chair? Do you think he appointed him initially, but there was a rocky relationship?
Well, the one thing about Trump, he says a lot of stuff and he does others. He gets so bloviated, screams, and then nothing happens. The idea of tampering with the central bank is stupid. And hopefully no one ever does that. We don't want that.
I mean, but Trump kind of did it his first. I mean, he not directly, but he was clearly through statements trying to, nudge them, certainly more than Biden has. But it'll be interesting to see.
Well, that's outside on TV. Who the heck knows what's going on behind doors? Don't tell me Janet Yellen doesn't walk down to things and say, hey, by the way, I mean, they're already noodling with short-term debt to try to, get things kind of shiny. Come on, there's always games out there.
Yeah. Yeah, well, it'll be interesting. I think Trump will, if he were to win, would do something quick. I mean, the kind of the hallmark of his campaign is, the economy and business and bringing and reining in inflation.
I think it's
Bob, what do you
confidence.
think?
It goes to confidence. It goes to confidence. People want to feel good. And right now, I think people are just a little bit like they're tapped out. When you feel tapped out, you're looking for something. And I don't know what it is. Hopefully it comes out tonight by one of the, candidates.
We still have 4 more months.
I know.
Over 4 more months of this crap. Sorry,
I
excuse my
know.
language.
It is crap.
4 more months of jawboning.
Oh,
It's kind of like when I talk to loan officers, or I talk to vendors, or I talk to people who are good at what they do. It's not that they don't care about interest rates. It's like, fine, I understand where they are, but I need to get back to my day job here. I need to get back to helping my clients, regardless of interest rates. And so the political noise out there, though, is going to become probably deafening as we approach the election, unless, some health event strikes either candidate, in which case, who knows what might happen. But yeah, a lot of jawboning, a lot of things that take away from us as an industry trying to help our clients if we're vendors, or trying to help our borrowers if we're loan officers.
great.
The housing inventory issue, sure to come up at some point tonight, and we've been talking about it for years, and no quick fixes. And we got another bad number today. New home sales in May down 11.3% from April, which was even way worse than, even bearish economists' projections. And the home builders have been really out there these last few weeks, kind of storming DC a couple weeks ago and meeting with policymakers. And you've just seen their top people from NAHB, be more vocal on platforms like LinkedIn and just in news stories. And it's, but what the home builders are saying is like, listen, I know everybody wants more homes, but sorry, like, I think they keep pointing to just the cost to acquire and develop land, in the 12 to 13% range. I'm not a math major, but it seems pretty prohibitive. And I just, it doesn't seem like there's any with the building community. There's not going to be any pickup of any sort in home construction that I could see. Bill, do you see it any differently?
So I want Bill to chime in here, but Bill, if I am a shoe repair person, okay, I own a little shoe repair shop, and suddenly gradually the price of shoe polish goes up, or shoelaces go up, or soles go up, I pass that cost on to my clients. I've got to.
Yes.
If I'm a builder and it costs X amount to get a permit, and X amount to put in the plumbing, and X amount to go hire somebody. And by the way, I don't see a lot of college educated Caucasian men and women out there swinging hammers when I pass by a construction site, just saying. But don't they pass those costs on to, shouldn't they just pass those costs on to home buyers and full speed ahead?
Well, that's the magic of inflation. You can do it until you can't do it. And we're now seeing the limits of it. And so the only thing that can happen is that home prices will have to decline. Either, affordability is either somebody has to make a lot more money, right? I think it was like from 75,000 to 120. That, B, home prices decline significantly, or C, rates come down, or a combination of that. It's really not that hard, but you can pass so I like your shoe story. That's going to work until it doesn't work. And then all of a sudden you charge me so much. I said, you know what? I'm not buying you shoes. I'm going to wear a pair of sandals. I'm going to get flip-flops. I'll change my buying pattern. And right now that we're seeing a real change in buying pattern in housing, it's like, I'd like to buy a home, but I can't afford it. And you've got to look at all these different inputs and figure out where we can really move it. But, it isn't 85 million or 100 million that you guys were talking about earlier. It's a big fix. And I think it's, it's a mixture of rates. We got to have rates come down. And honestly, we've been talking about this for so long. I don't even understand it. Like if we had a stable low 6 rate, we wouldn't have anybody on this call. Everybody would be running around selling deals. I mean, honestly, you're out there speaking, you see what's going on. people are not even looking for 5%. Now that we've gone from 2 to 8, heck, you give me a low 6 and just leave it there, life's going to carry on. They can't even handle the volatility, right? I have a conversation with Rich, and then a week later, rates are, a quarter different one way or the other. It's maddening. So let's hope we get some stable rates. We don't need them much lower, Rob. I agree with you. We just need them stable and just people feel good about their job. Let's hope we don't get unemployment, because at the end of the day, jobs buy homes, not interest rates. If we have unemployment, then we got a real problem.
Ooh, can I quote? That's like a bumper sticker. Jobs buy homes. Interest rates don't buy homes.
No,
If I use that, Bill, I will attribute it fully to you.
please do. Please do.
This is The Big Picture. I'm Rich Swerbinski with Onward and Upward Consulting, joined as always by Rob Krisman. This week's guest, the Chief Revenue Officer for Tabrasa, Bill Bodnar. A couple other news releases that came out over the course of the last week. We got a report a couple days ago, the Case-Shiller home value report, the most followed report on home values in America. Home values up another 6 point something percent month over month. 47.
Imagine that.
47% since the start of the pandemic. And then Rob, which we've been talking about, the Freddie Mac second mortgage thing was approved, but with some pretty hefty guardrails in terms of the total amount. And it seems like maybe they, some of the feedback on just the potential inflationary and home inventory negative aspects to it caused them to maybe, let's just dip our toe in the water and see what happens there. But any thoughts on exploding home values or Freddie Mac officially now in the second mortgage game, although no details have yet to surface on how to actually do it?
Well, Freddie Mac, I went into quite a bit of depth yesterday in my commentary about it, but it seems like, and I wrote much ado about nothing, because it's, limited time and a limited gene pool, and the general feeling is that a typical lender really doesn't have much to fear or much to be concerned about in terms of what Freddie Mac's talking about doing in dollar volume. The interesting thing that I've heard about since I started in this industry, and I used to talk to my boss about this, what's to stop Fannie Mae and Freddie Mac from just going directly to borrowers? Why do Fannie Mae and Freddie Mac need lenders? And he explained why, Fannie Mae and Freddie Mac, why they exist and why lenders exist and so forth and so on. But the thinking or some of the noise out there that I'm hearing about is this is kind of a little bit of a toehold in agencies dealing directly with borrowers. And that's maybe the bigger fear. Lenders are wondering, okay, this got approved by the FHFA. What's next? You'll notice Freddie Mac rolled this out. Fannie Mae's not done something similar. What does Fannie Mae have brewing? And so the question is kind of like, all right, what if they do start making inroads with borrowers directly and the pitch is deal directly with the source, i.e. Fannie Mae and Freddie Mac, going straight to the borrowers. We can do it more efficiently, more cost effectively. I think that's maybe the bigger thing that I'm hearing out there versus just the Freddie Mac second program.
Which ties into my radical prediction that if Biden wins, the government's going to get into the home building business. Am I taking it?
Well, I'm just hearing this for the first time now, Rich, on this call.
What do you
think's going to happen?
I think if Biden wins, I think they'll at least kick the tires on. Think about it. How do you get out of this home building mess in America? I don't see any way out. The subsidies you would have to give builders to build $200,000 and $300,000 homes. I don't know. I think once they really put pen to paper, I'm not saying like full scale, but on some level in some areas, I could see it happening. And quite frankly, I agree with the noise you're hearing on. This is consumer direct. I mean, we haven't gotten any details yet, but you figure on some level, it's going to have some elements of consumer direct to it, the second mortgage.
Yeah. I don't know. And with regard to builders and so forth, on one hand, I've talked to people who will go down the path of arguing we need less government interference and less government until the government interference helps them. in which case they're all for it. So we could say, I'm sure the industry is filled with people who are saying less government interference, less government in our lives. Oh, subsidies for builders, knock yourselves out. Oh, my son just had their student debt forgiven. Great. You know, it's anyway, really getting probably too political for this call, but
Bill, is
anyway.
is that more outlandish a prediction than a global pandemic, the government getting into the construction business?
Well,
Do we want them? Do we want them?
I
doing
own an
that?
EV that I purchased during the pandemic, and I wasn't doing it because I thought I was going to save the planet. I did it because I think they're cool, and I did a bunch of research on
What'd
it.
you buy, Bill?
I have a Fisker Ocean, which, by the way, sadly, fast forward, they're already went bankrupt. I'm embarrassed to say on this call. So the car is brand new. It's a lot of fun to drive, but bankrupt. But I also drove it to an event. I was speaking up in New Hampshire, and I was reminded that we were supposed to get a lot of chargers. And I don't know, we have, I guess, you know, we've got this thing there when we put a lot of chargers. I couldn't find them. There were trickle charges. I was actually had to, it was really funny. So I'm speaking at 9 o'clock. At 6 in the morning, I had to go to this outlet mall, knowing that no one was there to get a charger. And I grabbed my coffee. I was watching the TV like a ding dong in this parking lot. But the point is, you know, here we are supposed to have a lot of electric chargers. We don't have them. I don't know. Call me skeptical. I don't know. I don't know that we need subsidies. We just need people and kind of just make it easy, lower the cost. I mean, listen, locally to build homes, it's federal, it's state, and it's local. Even locally here in my town in Red Bank, they make a mess. I mean, you need like an act of Congress and a lot of money, a lot of time, and a lot of patience to even put the shovel in the ground. It's like, you know, you do the math. It's like, okay, and my buyer's getting hammered, you know, with inflation and higher rates. I'll sit on my hands. I'll sit on my hands.
Think of the mess that's in Lahaina, you know, burned to the ground. And okay, do we replace Lahaina exactly as it was without any thought of zoning? Where are we going to get the wood from? Where are we going to get the labor from? Look how many housing units that we lost in there, that we lost in the last Florida hurricane. We lose chunks of housing, or, you know, trying to get through that. Heck, you know, somebody wants to put a porch on their house or put a new roof on their house, and they have to get a permit, you know, and all the neighbors come out and grouse about it. I mean, it is very difficult environment. And I don't think there is an easy solution except the Zerbinski plan. I think we should all get behind that in terms of selling
Somebody
houses.
has got to explain to me, like I'm a fourth grader, why this is not this is not being talked about. Honestly, to me, it makes a lot of sense. I've been talking about it for years. Nobody's really thrown water on it, like in a way that I'm like, oh, that's the reason they're not doing it. But
Desperate times, desperate measures. We do need a lot of houses. And now, you know, we got more people in this country, and hopefully we keep continuing to bring more in this country. You gotta live somewhere. I mean, it's a backdrop for us. We know people want a home. We need a little bit of lower rates. We need a lot of housing stock, and you know, it's a reason to be very optimistic for our industry in the future.
I hate the dog a Clevelander, Rob, but Ivy Zellman, we're overbuilt. What happened? I haven't seen like we got way too many homes in America. This is like 2 years ago.
Oh, we should have her on the show again. Ask her what's
I
going
did
on.
reach out to her, and I, not surprisingly, I did not hear back. So, but
I think she's kind of retired.
yeah, our friend Tom Sattler in the chat, I've been seeing a lot of these columns. I think Goldman Sachs economist and a couple others kind of came out and basically said rates are going to be like, this is what rates are until 2026. I've seen a lot of these news stories. Tom Sattler asks the question in the chat, is it that hopeless, Bill? Should we just be resigned to, you know, this 6.5 to 8.5% rate climate like some economists are predicting now for a year or two?
Well, yeah, I mean, it's probably so. I see a little feedback. It's very tough to see meaningful decline in interest rates. And then when you think about the Fed, who wants to shrink their balance sheet, let's just say we get a little bit of relief in rates. You know, like one Fed official was out saying we want to maybe be open to the idea of outright selling mortgage-backed securities. Well, that's not going to do anything to help rates, but they can't do it now because they lose too much money. But if we get a little bit of improvement in rates, that may be very limited. You know, so unfortunately, Tom may be right, but who the heck knows? I mean, a couple of years ago, we laughed. Everybody talked about we're going to have a 5% mortgage and a massive recession. And Rob and I pushed back saying, how can you have a recession with like 3.5% unemployment? Of course, it never manifested. And so here we are. I mean, we're chugging along.
Does the Fed have anything official out there
Right.
about their
No.
official plans to like reduce their balance sheet? Because that's a great point, Bill. If rates start to come down a little bit, we get some rate relief. That's going to be an opportunity for the Fed to unload some of their mortgage-backed security holdings at less
And
losses.
push rates back up.
I mean,
Yeah.
that's right. I mean, that's the market dynamics.
Well, at least they don't go anywhere, right? They don't go, it definitely limits the improvement. I don't know.
Yeah, it kind of mutes it's like the restrictor plate on a NASCAR. I mean, it's something that bears watching. And when I saw a Fed official intimating that it could be soon, I clutched my chest as
The
I'm
hell are you talking about? Look around.
I've got enough problems. You
Shut
start
up.
selling MBS, you're gonna start liquidating your holdings.
I
Oh my
said, cut the
God.
mic.
I mean, what's next? Incorporating more G fee hikes into a spending bill? Oh, wait, that already happened. That's right. Yeah. So that's a whole topic for another. Don't even get me started on G fees, but because we're out of time today, but
We're out of time.
we are out of time. And Rob, I forgot to ask you where you are. I know you always talk about the crowded parking lots being, an example of the thriving economy. Are you looking to show that to
Yeah, I mean,
Look
the
at
parking
that.
lot's full here. People looking, double parked and roaming around.
Golf
Why-
course. You're going to play golf.
No, I'm having lunch with a friend.
There you go.
So
Excellent.
anyway,
Well, as always, I want to thank all of you for spending part of your Thursday afternoon with us here on The Big Picture. And we do record this live every Thursday at 3 p.m. Eastern on Zoom. If you go to watchthebigpicture.com, you can register for that. Of course, this becomes a YouTube and a podcast right after we get done recording. And I want to thank Bill Bodnar this week for joining us.
yeah,
Bill,
Bill, thank
for
you.
excellent insight as always. Really enjoyed it.
Thanks for having me.
And Rob, enjoy your speaking appearance tonight and your lunch and navigating that robust parking lot when you're done. So, as always, good to see you and a lively discussion on Debate Eve. So,
Yes,
there we go.
absolutely. Thank you, Bill.
Thanks,
Thanks,
guys.
Rich.
Have a great
Bye.
afternoon.
And until next Thursday at 3 p.m. Eastern, have a great rest of the week and weekend, everyone. We will see you next week. Take care, guys.